hobby loves to say that collectors control everything, but that's really not true. Power doesn't work like that. The reality is that the hobby is run on infrastructure, capital, and narrative. Just like every other major marketplace, the people who control those three things shape what you think matters, what gets attention, and where the money flows. Let's talk about the myth of collector control and bust that for a minute. Collectors think it's purely supply and demand, right? Like somebody discovers the Menendez brothers on a card, and there's a flood of people trying to get that new card with the Menendez brothers on it, and the price reflects that in a nice, perfect economic supply and demand curve reflected on eBay and card shows and auction houses. Nope. If you've watched this hobby long enough, you know that ain't true. Certain cards explode out of nowhere. You have no idea why or how. Certain players suddenly become very important. It's not a coincidence. Again, the market responds to power. Here's a couple quick examples. I'm an 86 Fleer guy. In our 86 Fleer group, over the past decade, somebody has been hoarding the Johnny Moore PSA 10s. Not going to name them, but they have. And thus, everybody trying to create a PSA 10 set of 86 Fleer, who are usually well-capitalized people, must enter this gate where they say, wait a second, why is this card as much as, not Jordan, but maybe a PSA 10 Magic Johnson? And it's simply because one person just had the brain power to start hoarding them all. And other people have done this with other rare cards. The Kareem sticker is another one from 86. So that's one example. The other example is bounties. Have you guys ever seen a bounty come out before there's even a card release? There's a reason for that. Or, some whales. I mean, some people do just say, I'm interested in that card and I'm passionate about that. I'm putting a bounty out. I've even done that before. But other times they're motivated by other things. It could be part of the narrative. It could be part of control. It could be part of pumping. It's a lot of different reasons for things. So you look at this pyramid of power. We are on the bottom. The collectors are absolutely on the bottom. We're the lemmings or the peasants, however you want to describe it. At the top is the true power, and as you move down, you lose it. You go from people who set direction to people who react. So the first layer here is infrastructure and market centers. That's the first layer of control. We've got marketplaces, grading authorities, liquidity platforms, authentication systems, price-setting ecosystems, and one company has almost all of those. So if you look at PSA and their eBay alliance, eBay's the marketplace, PSA is the grading authority, eBay's the liquidity platform, or one of them, other than the auction houses. The price-setting ecosystem is Card Ladder, owned by PSA. There's also Market Movers. Neither of them are higher than 65% accurate, by the way, and that's a massive problem. I'll get into the mess of comps in another video. Authentication systems, and that's the foundation. That's what keeps the hobby floating. This value of PSA 10 Jordan is in this tight band, and it's in that tight band for a reason. And it's because of this infrastructure in place. They determine this infrastructure, not like some communist committee. This market ecosystem decides what's liquid, it decides what's important, and it even decides what counts as legitimate. PSA's very first card was trimmed. They offered to buy it back, whatever. That is their very first card. It kind of sets the tone of the next, 30 years of PSA with that one acceptance. PSA is allowed to decide the grading curve and the grading scale, and therefore they control the pricing, what matters. They also have money. Not that they're heavy into sponsorships, because they aren't. They're not like Arena Club, who will pay tons of influencers. These companies that do have money, there are ways they can influence people. I'll tell you exactly how it happens, being one of those influencers. But when this all shifts, the hobby shifts with it. So let's dive into this narrative thing, this influence thing for a second. This is the second layer, and it controls psychology. All markets have this. Art markets have this. The stocks especially. My goodness, the stocks has everything from YouTube to Jim Cramer, CNBC all day long, and everything in between. It's very liquid, and it's also has its own influencers. Sports cards is no different. There are major content voices like Jeff Wilson. There's media outlets like Collect. There's corporate positioning from each of the companies, how they want things to appear, whether it's eBay or Panini or whoever. There's also thought leaders who shape conversation. Guilty, right? So if I decide to go on a rant, I went on a rant 3 weeks ago. I was really pissed off about the the Probstein snipe stuff, and then the shill bidding with Patrick Ryan, who's a good friend of mine. And I don't know, I went nuclear. I just like went on a tirade in my stories. And, I said I was like liquidating a lot of stuff, which actually was true at the time. And then I woke up to 100 plus DMs the next day saying they're selling everything, like their $50 Wemby cards or whatever. And then I was like, shit, okay, I need to be more careful about what I say. But it's a perfect example. Like, people look up to things I say. They think of me as a rational human being. I don't really have pom-poms out very often for things. And so if I say the market's taking a certain direction, people listen. And that is a scary amount of power in a place where there's only about 100,000 people, like on Instagram, that are into sports cards. It's about the same on YouTube. It's a very noisy 100,000 people. Stocks is, just keep adding zeros. But this is a very tight echo chamber. And so things can happen where, somebody voices something and it just takes off. It just gets wings and other people pick it up. And it happens with cards too. If there's a set release, it pops, and there's just a lot of action and commotion around set releases. That's not necessarily a bad thing. All businesses and all markets have marketing engines. Movies will come out. They'll have promotions. They'll have trailers. You'll see the actresses go on Jimmy Fallon. They'll go on Good Morning America. They all work like this. It's totally okay. I just want you to be aware of how things play out with the narrative, because what happens when sets release and players pop, the prices are typically at their highest point. And if you're a noob, I just want you to know that. If you're seasoned, you're going to be like, yeah, Nick, I already know that. Well, not everybody knows that, okay? So just watch out when there's a big, commotion, just like a movie, right? Like, I won't go see a movie in the first week or two because the movie theater's crowded. Now, the price is the same, but the movie theater's crowded, and I wait a couple weeks till it's not as crowded. It's the same concept with cards. If you don't like the noisy set release and all the breakers breaking it and everything like that, and like a player popping and a bunch of influencers saying to buy this player, then just let the noise die out. In a few weeks, it'll be quiet and the prices will come down, just like I do with a crowded movie theater. But I just want to be clear to you guys, attention is not random. A lot of these companies spend a lot of money in our space. Arena Club spends a lot. So does Courtyard. Lesser companies, supply companies don't spend as much. PSA is pretty quiet. They don't need to spend that much money. When you own a big chunk of the market, you don't need to hey guys, use PSA when you're already getting 80% of the market. But there are some companies. There are also startups in our world that are looking for exposure. They hit me up all the time. Now, capital power, I was just alluding to this by companies spending money, right? So there's big dealers, there's institutional buyers, there's hedge fund level collectors. There's people sitting on massive deep inventory. Like Rick Probstein is like half of the PSA 10 Jordans. He can move the market. If he auctions them all off tomorrow, he can move the market by himself. One person, just one person. A lot of different cards and sets have somebody like that. So when somebody has resources to buy depth in this market, they can restrict supply, they can amplify attention. The market follows. Retail collectors don't initiate many of these trends. We're almost spoon-fed this stuff. I'm a vintage guy, so I have like a vaccine. If you're vintage, you have the vintage vaccine, and you're safe from most of this commotion. You're watching Citizen Kane, and you're not worried about going to a crowded theater for the latest movie, and you're not watching Jimmy Fallon, and that's not how you find out about what you wanted to. But I assure you, 97% of the hobby is not us, and it's very different. One other example of capital power, didn't take too much. We had a whale come into the 86 Fleer group, and for 1 year, this person took his memorabilia money, probably about $1 million worth, pumped up most of the 86 Fleer autograph cards to 3 or 4x their value. It was like, whoa, this is the new market. And then ultimately culminated with him selling the set for $500,000 on Golden, thus concluding the pump. And the cards have returned back to their value. I very clearly saw this, and I did 3 or 4 videos calling his ass out. We don't talk anymore. If you guys want to know who that is, email me at thebostoncardhunter@gmail.com. I will gladly tell you, because I don't really condone this behavior. But that one person moved the market with like probably less than $1 million, and that's just one little market. Like, you could do that with PMGs, you could do that with Pokemon First Edition, you can do that with Star Cards, you could do that with anything. Anything goes in this world. There's no SEC act protecting us, nothing like that, which is why my previous video I said it's important for all of us to call out bad things. It's the only way. Now let's talk about the poor everyday collectors at the bottom of this pyramid. Collections do matter. We're the ones that populate these card shows and the National and Fanatics Fest. We have the energy, the passion, and the liquidity. But most collectors we're reacting to forces already set in motion. Way, way above us in the pyramid, just like the stock market. We just feel the waves more than we create them. That's just reality. Now, again, this isn't evil or wrong. I got nothing against this. I'm not yelling at the clouds here. I agree with this. I think this is a much better place than it was in the 90s and 2000s. And I enjoy the set releases. I think they're fun and exciting. I enjoy the breaks around them. And I don't typically buy around that time period. I just wait till they cool off. But some people like that. That's okay. Some people say, I want to be the first person to get a PSA 10 of this card. And that's fine. But just be aware of what you're doing and aware of how the markets work. So what should you do? I already talked about the vintage vaccine. You should vaccinate yourself against some of these things. Just understand if there's something wonky going on in a space. That's a great word, wonky. If you are like, wow, prices really went up fast this summer, just think critically about it. Look around. What's happening? Who did the last public sale? Call that person, email that person. Why did you buy that? Is this a real sale? Have you heard of other people paying this? Is it a one-off? Is it an outlier? Don't trust Card Ladder. Because again, Card Ladder is wired into PSA. And Card Ladder doesn't account for shill bidding. It doesn't account for breaking. It doesn't account for a lot of things. So just make sure you're aware. Look around you and critically think about why things are happening. Don't just blindly chase hype. And just ask yourself who the beneficiaries are every time a narrative explodes. And for me, you focus on scarcity, condition, and cultural permanence. That's it. If you do those three things, you're going to be okay. And that takes the form of a lot of cards. Could be baseball, football, basketball. Could be T206 all the way to 86 Jordan, and everything in between. Follow infrastructure moves instead of the infrastructure emotions. And pay attention to where liquidity is consolidating. Watch what's happening with the market. Like right now, I'm a vintage autograph guy and I sense weakness. I do. I sense weakness in the Bill Russell autograph market. I sense weakness in the Jordan rookie autograph market. I don't know why, but there is some there. And it actually prompted me to take some chips off the table on cards I was already very profitable with. And also my signed 1969 top set that I'm putting up for auction starting on January 1st. I'm taking that off the table too. So good luck if anybody wants it. So final thoughts. If you love the hobby, learn the power structure. Understanding it doesn't ruin the fun, just like understanding how a movie is hyped doesn't ruin the movie. It protects you financially and mentally, and it keeps you ahead of 95% of collectors who still think everything is random luck. Thanks, everyone. All right, the hint for this one is I want you to do the opposite of the title of this song.